previous session, we discussed innovation in general, noting that there are different types of innovation, and also that innovation can have different impacts on the market. Now we're going to explain these different types. Let's start by asking Larry Keeley to explain the importance of understanding the different types of innovation.
Very big team of Doblin people have focused on this topic beginning 19 years ago, including Vijay Kumar, who was then Chief of Methods at Doblin, and me and a few other folks that started to ask if there was some structure to breakthroughs in the world. The way we worked on that, one of the methodologists involved was Ewan Duncan, now at McKinsey in the Pacific Northwest, was to gather up 1,200 innovations over a long period of history, 200 years of history, and see if they had anything in common. To do that with a robust methodology, we took the 1,200 innovations, we stuck them in computers, and we essentially condensed them, boiled them down to see if those innovations across many different industries and across a 200-year swath of history did in fact have anything in common. Our hypothesis was that they would have nothing in common. They were too diverse. We were looking at Model T Fords and Cirque du Soleil circuses and many things in between, right? And so our thought process was that, there couldn't possibly be much in the way of connections. We were as startled as anybody else to find that there are now, and wait for it, have always been 10 distinct types of innovation. Now with cluster analytics, you can always twist the knobs and make it a smaller number of clusters, or open them up and make it a larger number of clusters. So there's a version of our research that would show you 30 clusters and a version of our research that would show you 4. But the 10 was the most predictive of the breakthroughs that happened year after year in lots of different industries.
Larry from Doblin was kind enough to explain why understanding the different types of innovation is important, and explain the 10 types of innovation that were identified by his research. There are more about these 10 types of innovation on our resource page, but I want to mention 3 specific ones in this lesson. First of all, we're going to look at the nature of what gets innovated. For example, the product, the service, the process, or the business model. And then we're going to look at the impact of the innovation on players in the market, whether it's incremental innovation or disruptive innovation. But first, we're going to go back to 3 of Doblin's innovation types. One of the types that Doblin identifies is called the process signature, or the superior methods for doing your work. For example, the retailer Zara has a fast fashion strategy that moves its clothing from sketch to retail shelf in record time. This is often called supply chain innovation. Similarly, Dell relies on a network of suppliers to deliver customized products many times faster than its competition. Importantly, each of these innovations are difficult for competitors to replicate. The second of Doblin's innovation types is product system complementarity. For example, Nike parlayed shoes, sensors, apps, and devices into a sport lifestyle suite, creating a whole package of Nike products. And Disney extended its cartoons into theme parks and cruise ships. Again, it's difficult for competitors to replicate these innovations. The third type of innovation that Doblin talks about is brand representation. The importance of brand is actually much more important than people recognize. A good example is how Virgin extended its original record brand into sectors ranging from soft drinks to airline. In each case, the company developed a deliberate innovation strategy. You can find out more about each of them and the 7 other types of Doblin innovation in the resources section of this course. Let me talk about looking at innovation using another framework. What is being innovated? It could be the product or the service, the actual solution that's delivered to the customer. It could be the process, the way in which the product is made or delivered, or the business model used, specifically the revenue model, which is the way in which the company earns money from providing the product or service. So let's talk about this, what gets innovated, and we'll start with a classic example. Some of you may remember when photos were taken on film, which was then processed and printed onto paper. Kodak was the world leader in this field. But unfortunately for them, digital cameras were invented, which removed the need for film and for processing. And digital cameras took over the market. It's ironical when you think about it, because Kodak actually invented the digital camera. But we'll discuss why they were not able to commercialize it in a later session when we talk about implementing innovation and launching new innovative products. New technology solutions can also help change process innovation. For example, recent developments in 3D printing will change how we manufacture products and components, moving production from large, cost-efficient factories that produce standard products to manufacturing custom solutions for each user. For example, Align Technology produces millions of Invisalign braces using 3D printing, each one customized to the needs of each user. Ford also uses 3D printing in ways that maybe you don't think about. So for example, when they're designing a new engine, they make a model of it using 3D printers, which takes 3 days. It's a much more timely and cost-effective process. It's easy to see how new technology innovation can both create opportunities and challenges for existing companies. Secret of innovation in these larger companies is a combination of the underlying market conditions and the technology developments, as well as the ability of the company to react to each new opportunity. The final example I should mention is business model innovation, or specifically revenue model innovation, and how the customer pays for the product or the service. There are 2 reasons why revenue model innovation is so important. First, it can help overcome user inertia, or the user's unwillingness to change behaviors. Second, business model innovation is very important because it can be very difficult for competitors, especially those existing players in the market, to replicate or copy. An interesting example of how a new revenue model enabled the success of an innovative product was the launch of the Xerox 914 in 1959 by Chet Carlson, the inventor of plain paper copying. The machine cost $25,000, at that time a lot of money, and no one was willing to pay that for a simple office machine. So instead of selling it, Xerox offered to rent the unit at $25 per month with a 4-cent per copy click charge. The click charge represented the cost per copy. Click came from the term of the counters that were used inside the machines to count how many copies you'd made. They also imposed a minimum monthly charge of $49 for the copies. The new model 914, which was actually the same product as the previous one but with a different revenue model, earned the title of the single most successful product of all time, and in 1965 achieved annual revenues of $500 million. Changing the revenue model changed the ease with which customers buy the product. In this case, even though in many cases customers ended up paying more money, they seemed to be very happy to buy the machine. They used it. They could see the saving that they made from the alternatives of making copies. This classic per-use revenue model overcame the sticker shock of the new machine and created satisfied customers who were happy to know that every time they took a copy, they were saving money. It's interesting to look at these alternate revenue models because a new supplier offering one can often compete by taking advantage of the incumbent's lack of willingness to change their business model. For example, before free email from Hotmail, most companies such as CompuServe, America Online and Yahoo charged for email services. These companies were in a perfect position to respond to the new free service from Hotmail, but hung on to the old revenue model to the point where they could no longer compete. And now they're no longer players in that market. This free model is really powerful, and I want to make a quick observation about the free model because it's increasingly being used as an important way of attracting customers. A sustainable business can use the free model to drive users, but then needs to find ways to drive revenue. For example, they could drive revenue by offering a premium service to accompany the free service, such as Dropbox, or by providing a free service and then selling advertising analytics, such as Google. So far we've discussed Doblin's 10 types of innovation and the differences between product, service, process and business model innovation. Let's finally talk about the impact of innovation and specifically the differences between incremental innovation and disruptive innovation. What do we mean by incremental innovation? Well, incremental innovation tends to help existing players in the market improve their position because customers or users either have less cost or more features. As a consequence, incremental innovation results in few changes in behaviors by either the customer, the user, or the company. For example, when Apple comes out with a new iPhone, It is designed to address the same market and demographics as the old one. Neither users or Apple have to do anything to change. This explains why it's incremental. It doesn't change the nature of competition in the market. Incremental innovation favors the incumbent. Incumbent is the existing player in the market. In contrast, disruptive innovation is innovation that changes behaviors, often of both customers and users, as well as suppliers. This is because disruptive innovation offers new levels of performance that either offer significant advantages over current solutions or offer solutions for previously underserved markets. This often means finding new customers or using new business models. Incumbents often don't see these new markets or are reluctant to change their business models because it will obviously affect their current business. As a result, disruptive innovation is often commercialized through a new venture, willing to take greater risks with a better understanding of customer needs and less concerns about changing the business model. This explains why many disruptive innovations come to market through new ventures. While this describes the types of innovation and explains how some innovations can help existing players strengthen their position and others change their position. Remember, the Toyota Prius was able to be an incremental innovation for Toyota because they could manufacture the new hybrid cars alongside their existing gasoline cars, and they could also service them through their existing network. This was not the case with the launch of innovative new electric cars such as Tesla. They had much less in common with traditional gasoline engines. They did not need to be manufactured on the same production line, and they certainly didn't need the same network of retailers. That's why electric cars represent a disruption over traditional cars and often allow new players in. For a better definition of disruptive innovation, Michael Rayner offered some insights. Michael is the author of Innovative Solution with Clay Christensen, and one of those people that has studied disruption at great length.
A disruptive innovation is an innovation that starts out by providing, if you will, less for less, right? So a relatively inferior solution, I'm shying away from saying product or service or product and service or solution to a problem, right? Something that does a job for a customer segment. So it is a relatively inferior solution that appeals to either a relatively small or relatively unattractive, economically unattractive market segment. So why am I saying relatively? Well, relative to the dominant incumbents in the mainstream market, right? So you can go all the way back to sort of where this started in thinking about the computer business. And you think about what was the dominant computer business in, the 70s. Well, mainframe computers, maybe mini computers, right? But big iron, as they used to call it. Those are the mainstream computer markets.
Understanding how innovation happens and the different types of innovation is important because, as we said earlier, it's about doing things differently. Most of us are not that good at doing things differently, and we all seem to have reasons to continue doing what we've always done. Even if we're aware that things will be different in the future, we always overestimate how far away the future is. Gary Hamel and C.K. Prahalad suggest that postponing the launch of new products, services and business opportunity is the same as not doing anything. They note that there is not a demarcation line between current and future business, but the short term and the long term are tightly intertwined. They try to bring home the point by suggesting that in every market, there are now hundreds of innovative companies currently experimenting in what could be nascent future opportunities for existing businesses. They go on to say, in this race to the future, there are drivers, passengers, and roadkill. This suggests that for companies that don't choose to be an innovation leader or an active innovation follower that partners with innovation pioneers, the future is unlikely to be rosy. As you can see, becoming more innovative is complex, but it's not really an option for societies, for companies and for you. Armed with a better understanding of what is and what is not innovation, as well as the different types of innovation and the impacts of innovation, can help you set an agenda about becoming more innovative. A topic we'll discuss more detail in the next lesson.